it's depressing.
Thank you, Mr. Mendez. Thank you to our candidates
looking
and
for
to our
words.
panel
No,
of
that's good.
reporters.
Thanks.
We'll return to questions from our panel after our next segment, that being the open forum, where the candidates will question each other. The candidate who asks the question will have 30 seconds. The candidate who responds will have 2 minutes to reply. A 60-second response to the reply, and then a 30-second rebuttal will follow. Mr. Keenan, a question for Mr. Mendez.
Thank you. I'll try to liven it up. I don't want to be too depressing. As I mentioned earlier in my opening, and as I've alluded to during the course of this conversation, I try to be accessible. I'm out there. I hit all kinds of neighborhood meetings. I hit all kinds of public forums. I'm out morning, noon, and night, talking with voters, connecting with voters, and working with voters to get their concerns addressed at the State House. Alex, you've been a candidate now for almost a year, and I have seen you twice during the course of that year. I haven't seen you at town meetings. I haven't seen you at neighborhood meetings. You're concerned about transportation. I haven't seen you at the neighborhood meetings relative to the Red Line reconstruction. I haven't seen you at meetings relative to fairs. I haven't seen you at veterans events. I haven't seen you at any of the events that you would expect to see a candidate at. I haven't seen you. I've seen you twice in the last year. How can you assure voters that if you're elected to the State Senate that you will put the work in, that you will be out there, visible, and accessible?
Mr. Mendez, you have 2 minutes to reply.
He only really tries to be visible. That's the reality. He shows up to meetings, he sits, he says some words, he enjoys saying that he's your senator and he's accessible. It's a lie. I've gone door to door over 500 miles shaking hands with tens of thousands of people, and no one really even knows who he is, what he does. They say, "Who's my current senator?" I say, "John Keenan." They say, "Who is he? What has he done?" And I say, "Precisely." What I want to do is make myself even more accessible by utilizing technology, increasing the size of my intern staff. And I'm going to be completely open and willing to go. When he goes to meetings, he's actually campaigning. It's almost depressing. I saw him go to a millennials initiative where instead of talking about serious issues like student debt, parking in the city, why a girl had to move her business to Dorchester and not keep it in Quincy with all this economic development happening. Instead, he ignored all those issues, absolutely ignored all those issues, and instead said, well, what do you guys do about Twitter? Do you guys read the articles or do you guys click on the headlines? I can't tell you how depressing that was if that was the leadership we see at meetings. Like I said, the other meeting he went to was the tirade about anti-cannabis, which was ludicrous. And then what I intend to do is do more and more. I'm always accessible. Always responsive to emails. I even have my personal cell phone number up on the website, and I always answer the calls. Yeah, so I'll definitely be accessible. It's part of the job. You haven't seen me because my job isn't campaigning. His job is to reach out to people. So if I'm not doing it, it's because I'm working out somewhere behind cameras. He likes to be in front of cameras, been doing the shoveling at the groundbreakings, whatever, taking credit for other people's work. So yeah, I intend that I can actually do a better job than him than simply showing up to meetings and asking you what you read on Twitter.
Thank you, Mr. Mendez. Mr. Keenan?
Well, Alex did account for the 2 meetings that I have seen him at in 1 year. And,
so you're paying attention.
And when you go to those meetings, you see people. People come up to you. They ask you what's going on at the State House. They ask you what your position is on an issue. They express a concern about what may be going on at the State House. That is a critical part of being a state senator. And it is above and beyond the work that we do at the State House during the course of the day. So, I respectfully disagree. I'm open, I'm accessible, I'm in constant contact with people. I have a record that I'm proud to stand on, and hopefully, as that record gets out there, the voters will, again, honor me with the privilege of representing them for the next 2 years.
Thank you, Mr. Keenan. Mr. Mendez, you have 30 seconds.
It's funny he's talking to me about contact because as his constituent, an actual neighbor living right down the street, besides seeing him trying to show face at these meetings, the only time I've heard anything from him was when he's campaigning, but was actually a letter using his senator title supporting his brother-in-law, Tom Koch, for mayor. And he mentioned all these senator things. He's always campaigning. That's what he's doing. He's not leading, it's campaigning.
Thank you, Mr. Mendez. Mr. Mendez, a question for Mr. Keenan.
Why should, I'm sorry, I missed that we get to ask questions, but why do I only hear from you during campaign season?
Okay.
Like online,
well-
I saw online, you'll see lots of sponsored ads sponsored by lobbyists. You'll see all sorts of random stuff where you just go, but it's campaigning. It's not necessarily outreach, right?
Thank you, Mr. Mendez. Mr.
Well,
Keenan?
if you went to the Wallaston School meeting relative to the reconstruction and the work to be done on the Red Line, you would have seen me. If you had gone to the East Braintree Civic Association as they talk about the compressor station over in Weymouth, you would have seen me. If you had gone to the town meetings in Abington, Rockland, or Holbrook, you would have seen me. I haven't seen you. And as far as what you may receive in the mail from me, as an elected official, and even during campaign season, let's acknowledge that it's campaign season, we have limited resources. So we try to, during an election season in particular, focus on those people who have expressed concern and who have shown an interest in the political process, to reach out to them. And so we do mailings in campaigns. We did mailings in the last campaign, and you didn't get one, apparently. The reason you didn't get one is that we do our outreach based on voter history. And if you look at your voter history,
I didn't vote in 2014.
in the last 5 years, you have missed 7 of 11 elections.
Yeah,
So if
because
you're
my
an
only
active-
options are
One-
people
I'm sorry,
like-
one at a time,
If
please.
you are an active voter, you will get something in the mail from people who are running for office. You have only voted in 7 of the last 11 elections over the course of the last 5 years. So if you're out and about at the meetings, if you're a regular voter, if you're watching cable TV, if you're reading the local newspapers, if you're engaged in the process, you'll see me. You'll have contact with me. And there are many people who do have that contact, because that is what I do every single day in my job.
Mr. Keenan, thank you. Mr. Mendez, you have 60 seconds.
He actually mentioned the compressor station. That's a good one. And you asked earlier about progressives. I'm a progressive. When I heard about the compressor station, I said, no way, natural gas, get out of here. It's not on the right path. But Keenan right here, he mentioned he's in the middle. He wants to go to those meetings and see which way it stands. Now he's completely against it because he forms his opinions as the time goes on. He doesn't go in there with principles, actually. He has good principles, community principles, but when it comes to the details of the issues, I don't see any leadership, just a man who shows up to meetings. And yeah, that's, I forget where we're going with this. Oh, you brought up my voting record. Oh, did anyone go to the primaries? No. Want to know why? Because your vote doesn't count in Quincy. It was all pretty much Democrats. Only 3,500 people showed up. So if he's angry at me for not voting, it's because I'm tired of the charade of showing up to a voting booth to see unchallenged incumbents every single time. All right? That's why I may have not voted.
Thank you, Mr. Mendez. Mr. Keenan, you have 30 seconds.
It wasn't just this primary. You didn't vote in the presidential election 4 years ago. You didn't vote.
That's actually completely inaccurate.
In the gubernatorial election last time around, which was also
No,
election
no,
for the
no,
state.
Please, one at a time. Please,
It's
Mr. Mendez. Mr. Mendez.
It's incorrect
Mr.
information.
Mendez,
I
please.
know that I voted.
Check your voting history. I'd
There are
be happy
two
to
Alex
share.
Mendez's. You
I'd
looked
be
at the
happy-
wrong
Mr.
one.
Mendez.
It's N. It's N.
It's by a unique identifier that's a public record, and it's tied to your age and your address.
Well, then my
The
vote didn't count because I
Mr.
showed
Mendez,
up.
please.
The information, well, there's no, in any event.
Mr.
So
Keenan.
let's talk about
Mr. Keenan,
I was interrupted, so just one quick point.
Because you were passing out lies.
10 seconds, Mr.
The compressor station. It's important to go to those meetings, community meetings, to hear what people think. And I have taken a position. I have reached out to FERC. I have reached out to our federal elected officials to express my position on the issue. You haven't done any of that. So it is important to do those things. It's part of being a senator.
Thank you, Mr. Keenan.